Bruce, Taylor Swift, now Guns N' Roses. Everyone's doing 3-hour shows. Great. Start them at 5 o'clock if you're going to do that.
Yeah, your crowd's older now.
Yeah, like, you still may have headbangers, but these headbangers go to bed at 9 o'clock.
I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
Welcome back to another podcast here, the Politics Unplugged podcast, and I am joined today with former Republican turned independent Chuck Coughlin and current Republican Barrett Marson.
Really? You're a Republican?
Honestly, I switched my registration in 2016 from independent to Republican, so I could vote
in the Republican primary,
which was a waste of time because it was pretty much done, and I've never switched back. Is
that just a matter of being lazy, or is that just?
I think that's a business thing for him.
I take umbrage with your comment that I'm lazy, but I have a fun Jan Brewer story. Quite frankly,
I've lost. It's like 30 seconds into the show, and I've lost control of this show.
When I first went to work for the Arizona House of Representatives as a spokesman for the Republican majority, I was a registered Democrat. I had changed my registration online from a Democrat to an independent.
Okay.
But it didn't take. I was on Service AZ or whatever, and I had hit the back button or something, and it wiped out everything, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought I was an independent. So I went to go vote in the primary, like that following election. And they're like, no, you're a Democrat. I'm like, no, I switched. Like, no. So I did it again, and it like months later, someone told me, like, hey, by the way, you're still a Democrat. I called up Brewer and Kevin Tyne, and was like, hey, I don't know what the hell's going on here, but why can't I change my registration? Like, I was a reporter at the time. I was still thinking about doing a story on it.
I can tell this is a deep part of your identity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been everything, Dennis.
I love that I was a reporter at the time and just used my privilege as a reporter to call up the Secretary of State in person.
Yes.
Hey, what's wrong with you people? Fix this.
Fix this.
I believe I called the helpline and she just answered.
Okay.
Probably.
Are we good now? Can I move on with my show now, Barrett, or do you got any more anecdotal stories you want to tell?
I thought we were still eating pizza and chatting about our days at the East Valley Tribune.
Oh, boy.
Oh, my God.
Oh, boy. That was a long time ago. Yes. And full disclosure, we did work together, and
many, many moons ago.
Barrett covered the legislature, and I followed him after he covered the legislature.
Go through the newsroom out there. That would be a pretty interesting. The newsroom at the Tribune.
Oh, boy.
That was a great time.
Dougie McEachern, Hal.
Oh,
Big Hal.
Big Hal. My favorite, Mark Flatton.
And
Mark Flatton was great.
Yeah.
Mr. I do 3 stories a year, and but they're all great stories.
All great stories, and usually someone lost their job.
Yep.
Anyway, let's talk about another big news week. God, I'm just so tired of saying that in Arizona. We used to be a quiet little state for politics where you pretty much knew that Republicans were going to win all the major races. It's just not anymore. We're a major swing state, so it seems like every week we're just having big news. We had the long-anticipated, long-awaited, long-teased Kari Lake announcement as she was jumping into the Senate race. And I kind of want to get your takeaways from her announcement. And I'll start with just have you react. My big takeaway was it was clear that Kari Lake is going to run the same campaign that she ran the last year for governor.
Well, she had a good line about inflation, Everybody's an American, Dennis. Everybody pays higher gas prices, and it's wrong. I mean, she was at least trying to speak to a larger part of the electorate for a moment there.
Well, yeah,
for a quick second.
To the common person, not the common voter. Yeah, but, I just thought the whole thing was weird because just the background of the whole announcement, is at the headquarters of Jet Set magazine. So when you go look at Jet Set magazine, I mean, this is a magazine that caters to the wealthy, the affluent. About like high-end tastes and stuff like that. It was just like a really, was an interesting place.
You're not suggesting it's part of her donor base.
Just an interesting place to kickstart a campaign.
Yeah, it was an interesting place and not very crowded from the pictures that I saw, all the coverage I saw.
Oh, come on. That's fake news.
I do.
It was hugely overpopulated.
No, I do think that overflow crowd that they were expecting, I think they were all getting ready for the Guns N' Roses show the next night. And so I think that's why we had a limited limited population out there at that hangar. Look, I am anticipating Kari Lake going from batshit crazy to maybe just a little less crazy. But otherwise, I fully anticipate the same Kari Lake. I don't think she can.
I mean, we all
pivot.
talked about that, right? Before the announcement, we were like, okay, can she try and rebrand herself and bring her back to a narrative? As hard as that would be, could she speak more to the common issues that are affecting everybody? And from immigration to inflation to, the education, and could she speak to those issues? And, right out of the gate, she did it was like a guy running an 80-yard fly pattern, gave the cornerback a head fake right at the line and then went. I mean, she didn't, I didn't see her execute on that idea.
And I think the issue is, she won in 2022. Or so she believes.
Won the Republican primary.
Well, no, she won.
She won the primary. There's no doubt on that.
She won the general.
There's also no doubt that she lost the general.
Well, but no, there is a doubt in her. Well, actually, there is no doubt in her mind. In her mind, she won, and so I will do what won me the last race.
Right.
Inexplicably. I mean, look, I fully agree that she lost, and she lost because of how she spoke to Arizonans, but
she's going to win this Republican primary too. I mean, there's really very little reason to believe that 35% of the electorate, of the Republican electorate, that buys into that and shows up in primary elections is going to be her crowd, and that's going to be who.
But I do think
Donald Trump still holds a lot of sway over that part of the party. And that night, he gave his quote full and absolute endorsement. In a video message that was played on the stage. I mean, she starts off like, the heavy favorite. Mark Lamb might disagree, but that's just the realities of where we are right now.
But, Mark Lamb has to do more. There's no doubt about that. He's got to start raising actual real money. But beyond that, I don't know if high ground polls have shown this, if you guys have actually polled, but I know that one of your competitors has shown that Kari Lake's popularity has decreased since 22, and to which I always say it's probably because she spends more time at Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster than Arizona.
Well, she hasn't. I mean, there was a lot of people that I think held their nose last in that gubernatorial cycle and said, I got to vote for the Republican. But I think since that time, and since her narrative has been, election denialism, I don't believe. I would say that was the height of her popularity, was on her Republican primary night when she won. And then she's consistently tried to, alienate parts of the electorate from being able to come her way. And we saw that in the last election. We saw Kimberly Yee outpolled her, right? And Rachel Mitchell here in Maricopa County.
Kimberly didn't just beat Kari Lake. Kimberly Yee, who nobody knows what the state treasurer does, much less who the state treasurer is. She got the most amount of it. She beat Mark Kelly.
Yeah.
She beat every single statewide elected uncontested.
That's
the mine inspector.
That's
got
what
more
the
votes.
scientists would cut the baseline test, right?
Absolutely.
And if you want to understand, because I do get frustrated with the national media that come in, write stories about how we're this purple state, and it's like, no, we're still a very Republican leaning state.
Yeah.
And the baseline test is Kim Yee, because statewide, all people knew about that race was the D in the, behind Martine Quezada's name running for treasurer, and Kim Yee. Ours a great baseline test for that, and she, poleaxed him politically.
Yeah, right. And so Kimberly Yee ran a whatever campaign. I mean, no one spends money for state treasurer, right? I mean,
it's a very competitive race.
Yeah.
It's like right above the state mine inspector race,
exactly.
right?
And so, there, one news story a cycle about this office, and she got 1.3 million votes, and more than Mark Kelly, who ran a $150 million race, right? And so, I just believe that Arizona is still a conservative state. We are just not a MAGA state.
Yeah,
right.
and
we're not that brand of Republicanism.
Yeah.
Or if it's, I don't think it's a Republican anymore. After they threw McCarthy out, they're the rhinos now.
Right.
I mean, so there's no definition of what a Republican is.
Well, there's no definition of what a rhino is. That's for sure. Because if Doug Ducey is a rhino, then there's just no definition of a rhino.
Well, let me ask you too, because the one issue, going into that announcement, I thought the story was. The lead of the story was, headline or whatever, was whether she acknowledged she lost the 2022 governor's race or she didn't acknowledge it. Whatever she said on that, I thought was kind of the lead going in. She didn't acknowledge anything about that. Is that something that you think her supporters want her to address or just don't care?
I would, if I'm her consultant, I would insist on walking that statement back and saying, I was wrong and I'm going to go forward. I'm going to fight this. But she'll never do that. I mean, it's so part of her identity of being anti-everything and the grievance culture that she represents that it's not aspirational. It's all old and it's all grievance. Yeah. And so, it is who she is. But that and I don't think the core of her establishment really cares about that. They want to hear her grievance. They want to hear the fraud. They believe in that. I mean, we've seen that too. I mean, at a point in time, there was 70% of the Republican electorate that believed that the election was fraudulent. I don't think that's true today. I don't think that number's the same today.
I will be interested in, and I think that, Chuck has a lot of experience in this. Voters want to know what you are going to do, not what happened to you 2 years ago, 4 years ago. Sure. And so I really think that, voters want to hear about your message. First of all, we have $5 gas. And it's gone down to about $4.50 now, but, just 2 weeks ago it was $5 gas.
Where'd you get $4.50 gas? I got to go there.
Yeah, no, I saw it like $4.65 or something like that, It's come down a little bit. But, interest rates are 8%. So that $400,000 home that you were going to buy is now almost unaffordable. Not because you're looking to get a bigger house, but it's the same house. It's just now you have to pay $1,000 more for it.
Yeah.
So they want to hear how someone, their leader, is going to impact that, how they are going to tackle that. And getting up there and just talking about Maricopa County, Richer, Fontes, whoever, and all those issues, that is not going to, certainly not going to expand your.
Yeah, I think.
But I think you're going to lose people who are, hey, tell me what you're going to do, not what happened.
I think that was the message that the Republican establishment in Washington tried to encourage her to do. Do not look backwards, look forward. They're not going to support her until she demonstrates that she's a viable candidate.
But the problem is those senators, what do they know? Have they ever won an election? No, they're just senators somehow. They don't know the real.
It was fraud.
Yeah, but the one thing that stood out for me, the difference was, and this was a stark difference, like the one stark difference I saw in there, because I was out there covering that, was she was actively encouraging her supporters to vote by mail, if that's what they wanted to do.
Yes.
That's a big change.
Yeah, that they've gotten that through the Trump MAGA head that, everybody's comfortable voting by mail, particularly in Arizona. And in order to compete in that election, you have to win that portion of the ballot.
Chuck is so old, he actually can remember going to, polling places to vote. But, the last 30 years?
I can remember Sunday stories during the MLK campaign when we were torpedoed by Norman Brayman, the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, on NFL Today, and I was begging Mike Salcedo not to run the story because everybody voted on Tuesday. So all the leading news coverage going into it was Arizona's going to lose the Super Bowl if they don't vote for a King holiday. And I'm like, oh, don't cover that.
Yeah.
And now you put out a story the Sunday before the Tuesday election. You've missed 80% of the voters.
In the air.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And so, Arizona has this great, rich history of voting by mail. And when you tell people don't vote by mail, go vote. And then there are, unfortunately, an issue, with the ballot machines that Maricopa County had. And it was an unfortunate issue. And but, hey, there was an easy way to avoid that, and that's tell your people to vote early.
Could this change her fortunes, though? Could she win a race statewide if she gets into that general election? Again, presumably she's going to win the nomination. I'm assuming she's. if she's
who's in the race? I mean, the other big shoe to drop here is.
And we'll talk about that in a second.
Right,
we'll talk about that in a second.
Because I think she could win a 3-way race. That's within her realm of possibility. I don't think winning a 2-way race is a possible thing for her.
I'm in full agreement. She could win a 3-way race. I don't know that she will, but she certainly has a better chance in a 3-way of coming out on top.
Yeah, particularly if she is encouraging people this time around to vote by mail. I mean, because my feeling was that hurt her and other Republicans last cycle because they kept railing against the fraudulent mail-in system.
It hurt in 20. It hurt in 22. I mean, Trump was told that was going to damage his ability to win, and it did.
So the big shooter drop in that race, obviously, is our former Democratic turned independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema. She keeps acting like she's going to run, but she still hasn't officially announced whether she will seek re-election. Your thoughts on whether or not she's going to jump in and run in this race? Because I still have a lot of doubts, while most people in the political chattering class, you guys, in your class, thinks it's a done deal. She's going to jump in.
But hold it. Up until February, I was in the no camp. I thought she for sure would bag a race and go off and join a couple of boards and have fun running marathons and all that stuff. I really thought she wasn't going to run. Then what changed my mind? The smallest little thing. She actually did a fundraiser at the Phoenix Open. And, Doug Ducey did those all the time, right? But Kyrsten Sinema at the Phoenix Open with, the craziness and the drunkenness there, that is
It's fun, though.
Well, it's fun for us.
But hey, hold on. We're breaking news here. The crazy and drunkenness at the Phoenix Open?
Yeah. That is nails on a chalkboard to Kyrsten Sinema. And I was like, and I think the fundraiser was over 2 of those days. She went to the Phoenix Open and had to deal with these drunken bros and, women in high heels walking on grass for 2 days. Oh, she's committed. She's running.
You think that's
I was on the opposite end of the spectrum when she announced last December that she was going to pull the trigger and do this. I was like super excited. I was like, wow, that's a brilliant move on her part, because she cannot win a Democratic primary and she has to evacuate that ground to be able to compete, at least create a spot for her to be able to survive in. And so I was totally enthusiastic about it. And then as I've watched the cycle mature, I've gotten more cynical about how attractive that option is to her, and we can talk about that. But I'm also wondering, is it really as competitive? I understand she's a super competitive person too. I mean, the makeover she's done of her life from the time that we knew her down in the legislature.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's unbelievable to see her and to see that transformation, and that takes a lot of passion and courage and competitiveness to do that. And all of that's wrapped up, and then I'm like, is she really going to do this though? Because it's a very difficult thing to do, because 40% of the electorate is deeply partisan. I mean, it's like 2 different ends of the pool, and none of them are going to vote for her right at the get-go.
Yeah.
You lose 40% of the electorate. So you have 60% of the electorate left, and you need to get 40% of that 60% in order to be successful.
Well, she thinks that she can get 60 to 70% of independent unaffiliated voters, which is pie in the sky. Yeah.
But I mean, that's what Chuck just said. 40% probably wins. So when you look at Kari Lake, and she got 49%. Or 51%, who knows? She got 49% in the general election, so she can lose people still and still win that race.
But that's a 2-way race, right? And this is
right. I'm talking about in a 3-way race.
In a 3-way race, I really look at Lake's ceiling being pretty much her floor. It's like 34. Yeah. I think she's like in a 34 on a good day, and I think she's probably close on a very aspirational day to like 38. Yeah. But it's not going to get more than that.
Everything is.
But that may be enough to win in a 3-way.
In a hugely competitive race.
But everything leading up to get on the ballot, she still needs to gather signatures. It's going to be a lot more expensive than that. And she hasn't even started doing that.
Yeah, but money solves all problems. And while she didn't raise a lot of money in this last quarter, she still has $11 million in the bank, which is a lot of money. Ruben has to also...
That's a lot of money to you.
Yeah. Well, Ruben still has to spend money to tell people who he is. I mean, he is an elected congressman from the smallest voting district in the state. So, I was looking at this the other day. I think like in the Schweikert congressional district, it was about 350 or 360,000 people voted in that election. In Ruben's district, it was like $120 or $140 or something like that. 140,000 people voted.
But he's had the space to himself essentially for a while. And I know Mark Lamb is announced months ago. We haven't seen much of a Lamb campaign. Gallego announced at the beginning of the year he's been out everywhere you look. He's out doing something. Every time I open up my email, there's a press release from his campaign. He's had the space for a while. That doesn't mean he's got great name ID, but I think he's helped himself with that at this point.
I think he's run a fairly good campaign so far. Yeah. He's locking up all the Democratic votes that he can. He's playing to that constituency. And he's as I said, he's put down his Twitter. He's not being a rogue on Twitter anymore, going after people. So he's making himself more available to be considered by unaffiliated candidates or unaffiliated voters. And so he knows he has to appeal to that part of the voter base. And I think he's trying. I think he's in ways trying to do that.
How do you handle the encounter with Kari Lake? And for the quick backstory on that, for listeners, viewers who may not be familiar with this, there was a big spat, a confrontation between Lake and Gallego. It started on social media, a mid-air flight from D.C. to Phoenix, and it ended outside a Sky Harbor bathroom with Kari Lake mic'd up and confronting Ruben Gallego about open borders and whatnot. Ruben, he didn't yell, he didn't get mad or anything like that.
Yeah. He stayed very calm.
He stayed very calm.
I think his intention there was not to try and be rude to a woman. I think it was his reflexive reaction was, I don't want to be rude to her.
And I think Kari created a viral moment for herself.
Yep.
But in that video, I didn't see her add one voter.
No,
that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, like,
and so it was a good moment for her, if you will, because she was able to confront Ruben and call him a liberal and all that stuff. But
are you broadening the
Ruben for Ruben to handle that better?
Yeah,
he needs a better A/B scenario. I'm a patriot. I defended my country. Your president had bone spurs and didn't ever defend his country. I am that guy. You're a fraud. I believe the election was real. You do not. You're a fraud. I mean, he needs an A-B scenario there very quickly to go rat-a-tat-tat and then walk away.
One of the things I didn't understand was when he's like, I look forward to working with you. Working with one of you is going to be in the Senate, and one of you is going to be enjoying the sunshine of Arizona.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. You're not going to be in. It's not like you can run for Congress and the Senate as well. So you're not going to work with her. I didn't understand that. And granted, she's mic'd up and she's got the camera, and and he just comes out of the bathroom like, "Ooh, that felt good after a long fight." And now all of a sudden, I got this crazy woman, yelling at me.
Yeah. You're not going to do the 60 minutes walk off the camera.
I think the Bill of Chuck's point. I think that was a moment where he's trying to be civil.
Yes. I think that's what he thought that was his goal there. It's an admirable goal, but one that's not accomplishable with a candidate like Kari Lake.
All right. Do you want to move on? I do want to hit one other thing real quick. Listeners, viewers of the podcast here, I'm sure this is something that may or may not be interesting to them, but state finances, they look to be in a mess again. I mean, just about... I don't know. I'm old enough to remember 4 or 5 months ago when the state was supposed to
with a $2.1 billion surplus.
Well, I know.
Champagne.
Yeah. Well, when they finalized the budget deal this year, just 4 or 5 months ago, we were projected to have a $10 million surplus.
Yeah.
That $10 million surplus has grown into a near $500 million deficit. A $400 million deficit is what is being projected.
It's the Ross Perot giant sucking sound.
Yeah. And already everybody's arguing. You've got Republicans in the legislature talking about agency cuts across the board and this kinds of things. I'm interested how does something like this affect the politics and the campaign as well as the legislature next year?
Well, last year, earlier this year, the budget kind of came together pretty quick. And there was almost no controversy. It was great. And when you have, every member of the legislature gets their $15 or $30 million pot of money, and so I guess that does make it easy. What about when they have to actually make some decisions about actually where to wisely spend the money as opposed to just giving it to, for shits and giggles to your friends and whatnot? Mm-hmm. It's going to be much, much harder. And the ease of which this budget, the current year budget, came together will be the exact opposite of for next year.
Right. And I've articulated the path that this is likely to go down. Mm-hmm. I would say that the first thing that Ms. Hobbs should be doing is talking to her Democratic caucus and reviewing that $2.1 billion expending spree they just went on, and go back and come up with a list with the caucus of all those programs that got to come back, that we have to eliminate or begin to claw back a bunch of that money. I mean, there's $385 million for the freeway in the East Valley that's going to be funded by the Prop 400 money when that passes. And so that was a Jake Hoffman expenditure. But that'll be, to me, that should be the Democrats' marking orders coming forward. Clearly what the Republicans are going to do is what they ended doing last time, was cutting state shared revenue and cutting support for cities and towns. They did that on the rental tax last time. The food tax is one that's coming back. And then they will go after the state shared revenue money, which we increased by 2.5% when Ducey cut income taxes to hold those cities harmless. They'll go after that. That's going to be the play.
Yeah, but that's kind of old school Republicanism, is when you get these deficits as an excuse to cut, and let's cut government.
Right.
Starve the beast, as they say. Right. But is this the kinds of issues that can change the political dynamics on the campaign trail? If you've got a campaign with one guy's talking about we need cuts and tighten our belts versus somebody else is like, no, we need to save all this stuff. I mean, does that old school brand Republican message still work?
Yeah, one thing, to sort of Chuck's point and sort of your point, like the $385 million for expansion of I-10. I mean, voters don't see that for 5 years from now, right? So it's hard to campaign, hey, I voted to expand I-10 3-4 years from now, right? I think we're seeing that in Bidenomics, right? Yeah, right. I've got all this money for bridges, and you don't really see that. So I think that is easy money to claw back because voters can't see it today. And
you're not taking anything away from them, yeah.
Right. They can't see it today, then you haven't really taken much away from them.
It's like you were saying, like voters don't want to look back where they want to look forward, but not that far forward.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Right. The cities are already going to be on Hobbs to go get that rental tax money back. Yeah. Right? That was the deal on the Prop 400 cut at the end of the session was we'll eliminate the rental tax, which affects like 71 cities and towns, and they're going to get hammered on that. And we all know that 50% of every municipal budget is either police or fire. And so it's a public safety cut is the way they're going to play it. And they're going to say to her, go back and reclaim, pay us back for what you took. That's the first request of the cities and towns to her. So she's got to start with, in a very different place than where the Republicans are and try and craft a caucus position with her Democratic colleagues that maybe at the end of the day you can recruit a few Republicans onto your team. It's a very different scenario than last time.
This is also a different scenario than, say, the federal Congress, right? There are very few, barely a handful of moderate Republicans who would turn on the caucus 3 months before the election.
Yeah, well, it's a guaranteed primary, right? You're going to get primaried,
right? And they're already going to get. The filing deadline's April, right? So they're going to, there's going to be a primary opponent, and maybe if you're a moderate Republican and there isn't one, maybe you're lucky then, and then you have that freedom. But for some of the moderates, which again there are not many left, that is going to be a very difficult move to try and partner with Democrats on anything, and I think it's going to be difficult for anyone to claw back, for the cities to get more money to make up for the
none of this is easy.
Right.
None of this is going to be easy.
And I agree. I mean, look, the Republicans will again go after the food tax because I think both the food tax and the rental tax are popular with voters. Mm-hmm. And voters will see that, $20 deduction.
Voters, don't get me started on the rental tax because renters. I'm not going to see that.
No, your landlord's grabbing that money.
Yeah,
no way. When I rented,
my rent went down by like $56.12.
Yeah,
that's not happening.
That will happen. That will happen.
Oh,
well,
man.
we're gonna have to, on that note,
can you be my landlord? I want the Barrett Marson, the Barrett Marson Property Management Company as part of my advocacy. Group.
when you sign a lease, you sign, it's like $900, $5,000 a month, and then your 2% rental tax, and so there's a line item for it. Now they eliminate the line item.
Yeah,
but it'll still be there, as Dennis said.
They won't. And the other thing that drives me nuts is like. It doesn't start until 2025.
Well, that's all. Well, that is another.
And that
problem.
was all played up as part of solving the homelessness crisis and affordable housing,
not.
which it wasn't.
No,
and that problem still exists on its own as well. There's still a giant problem there.
That's another show I'll have you guys on. I love how everybody says they're addressing the affordable housing crisis. Republicans and especially Democrats love to say they're doing that, and they're not.
I know that's
almost nothing. There was
it's
a good
seriously
start.
complicated issue.
It's a very complicated issue, but don't tell me like, oh, you can build a casita in Phoenix. That's us addressing the affordable housing, crisis, because it's not. It's. Yeah. Anyway, I think we've hit our time.
We've exhausted ourselves?
We've exhausted ourselves, so I really do.
I'm exhausted.
No,
dude, I love talking to you guys. I could talk to you guys for another half hour.
He's got a golf shirt out, and he's got a golf shirt out in the car that he's definitely going there when we get done.
I just want to end with this. I want to randomly spring this on you guys. We're in the Halloween season. What's your favorite go-to movie for the Halloween season? Chuck, I'll start with you.
Oh my God, I hate scary movies. I'm trying to think of what I'd have to go. I'm not a fan. My kid is. My kid is like, Scream.
Mm-hmm.
What's the one where he's in the house? What was that one?
Jason, Freddy.
When a stranger calls.
He's calling. He's calling from inside the house. Oh my God! I'll tell you, my favorite one. Was when we were running Jan Brewer's campaign against Chris Comiskey for Secretary of State.
2002, baby.
Yeah.
I covered that race. I covered that race.
We created
Comiskey juggernaut that
We
year.
created a viral video, that went online back in the day, and it was people walking in, on Halloween. They go, "Where's Chris?" And it ran on this script that Chris had been absent from the legislature for like a third of the session. I think he was having a baby around then, so he was missing from
family values.
Cold, man.
Family values.
So we ran this thing, and it was like, Chris, where's Chris? Has anybody seen Chris? And then it's Chris is missing. We won a Polly for that.
I actually am going to watch Kari Lake's announcement speech on a loop. I figure there's nothing scary.
Wow. Shots fired, man. Shots fired. My favorite, I guess, if we're going to mix politics with horror, I'm going to say my favorite was the fake mine inspector campaign who went after the old mine inspector because he, quote, didn't clear the mines of vampires.
Oh,
you remember that, don't you? Yeah, you remember that. That was a fun campaign.
Were they attacking Joe Hart on that?
Yeah, they were attacking Joe Hart.
How could anybody attack Joe Hart?
He was a baller.
Joe Hart was all heart.
he was
God
a baller.
rest his soul.
R.I.P.
Joe Hart.
R.I.P. Joe. All right, guys. Awesome. Thanks for stopping by.
All right. Thanks for having us.
All right. Welcome back. I am here with the fantastic producer extraordinaire, Colin.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for coming back here, sticking with me here. Just kind of, you want to get your general thoughts about the conversation we had there, particularly about Kari Lake. It seems to be they both kind of think that it's going to end up being a three-way race. That's the big question at this point, as it's starting to look like things are filling out. So just your thoughts. I mean, you think from what you could tell, Cinema's going to jump in.
I mean, it certainly looks like she's going to jump in. She's been doing the fundraising. She's been acting like someone who's going to jump in.
Yeah.
It's, as they said, she seems to be a very competitive person.
Yeah.
And it's pretty hard to find any sort of actual path to victory there. Really hard to find any sort of path to victory there. So I'm not sure that. I'm not entirely sold she's jumping in, because I think at some point someone on her campaign is bound to look at the numbers and go, I don't know that this is doable.
I think the interesting point I think Chuck was making there is that 40% of the electorate is both highly partisan, and you're not going to win them over. So you're looking at the remaining 60%, and how can you get enough votes out of that to carry yourself to victory?
Yes,
because the memo, I keep saying over and over, and I may be proven wrong. I've been proven wrong, quite a lot of times. I'm not pretending to be an expert forecaster and everything like that, but when you're looking at 60-70% of independents, that seems unrealistic to me.
It seems wildly unrealistic.
And it's a rough path. I am convinced that it is a wait and see strategy. Prepare like you're running, act like you're running. And while still searching for that moment that maybe you can turn the numbers around and it looks like there is a shot at victory. That's where I think she's at.
And I think that makes the most sense, because, no one wants to go out. No sitting senator wants to go out in third place in a three-way race.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's what she's looking at, I can't imagine she would want to go through that.
Yeah, and I think too the other thing we were talking about there too at the end was the state finances. And for people listening here, if you were happy with the way things ended at the legislature this past legislative session, ended a little early, it didn't drag out, good luck next year. Yeah. I do not know how this is going to work next year. You throw in a $400 million deficit into an election year, man, that's going to be nuts. It is going to be. There's going to be a lot of political warfare down at the Capitol next year. A lot of drama.
And with so much of that tied to the school vouchers, where neither side seems likely to give an inch on that. I mean, particularly Republicans.
Yeah.
That's taking up a huge chunk of the budget now, and the Republicans don't seem to be. That it's something that is very important to them. They don't want to bend on that. And it's really hard to see a good, solid way forward if no one's bending on that.
It's going to be a rough year next year. Who was the political philosopher said something about life being short, nasty, and brutal, nasty, and harsh, or something like that. I mean, it's going to be brutal next year. It's going to be a long year at the legislature.
Yeah.
But so with that, I want to pivot and talk about something very happy here. I want to say congratulations out there to the D-backs, the Diamondbacks.
Well, it was a week or two ago when we were sitting here talking about what a great moral lift it would be for them to actually make the playoffs.
Yeah.
What a great success story this would be. And they're in the NLCS.
Yeah. Dominated the Dodgers.
Yes.
The dreaded Dodgers.
Swept the Dodgers. And at times just looked, the 4 home runs in one inning, not counting the one that went foul.
That was crazy.
That was insane.
That was like, wow.
I was thinking about this. Is this about as much fun as you have as a sports fan? I think just about the peak fun for a sports fan is when your team does well and it's completely unexpected.
Yeah. It's always the best.
No one saw this coming from the Diamondbacks. People thought, the good young team, they could make a little noise. Mm-hmm. No one had NLCS. No one had them sweeping the Dodgers to get there.
Yeah,
it's just fun.
Is it a little bit like a few years ago when the Suns made it to the NBA championship?
Yeah, I think
finals?
A little bit. Yeah,
because that seemed to be that was not the expectation heading into the year.
No. I think the expectations had grown a little more for the Suns than they have for the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, because in August I'd see you in the office and be like, "You're circling the drain, man," because. Yeah. Coming out of that All-Star break, their bullpen was awful, and they were losing games. They were just losing record for a while. Coming out of that, they were 16 games above 500. I think shortly before heading into the All-Star break, and then it looked like the wheels were coming off.
Yeah, and it just to contrast to the Suns have heavy expectations this year, which they could very well fulfill. That's a great team. That's a really good roster. But it's a different thing rooting for them in a year like this than it is rooting for the Diamondbacks in a year like this, because I don't know. As an Oregon football fan, I can sort of compare it to that. It used to be we were so happy when we won. It was such a great, exciting thing when we won. And now, years later, when Oregon's gotten to be sort of a power, I'm not happy when they won. I'm pissed when they lose. Mm-hmm. And that's not a great place to be as a fan. I'd rather be happy when they win. And like if they beat Washington, I'll be very, very happy.
Yeah.
But with an established, solid team, you have more mixed feelings as opposed to a team like the Diamondbacks that's on the rise and you're just ecstatic.
Yeah, I mean, because with the Suns this year, it's just like, punch your, buy a ticket, get on the bus, we're going for a ride.
Yeah.
This one is like hold on a second. Like it's like this, like the Valley of the city has like discovered that there's a baseball team here all of a sudden, and like people are getting into it. The other night for the clinching game, I was at a local watering hole, watching the game, and just amazing. And they were everybody's cheering for it, but it had this really strange incident where, like, every time the Diamondbacks were gonna throw out a Dodger or made a good play, like during the home run stuff, he would yell out, kick him in the nuts. And I was like so confused. I'm like, what? I've never. This is how we root for them now. Like, this is weird. But
is that going to replace Embrace the Chaos?
Yeah. I was like,
we kick him in the nuts.
But I gotta say, it was like by the time, after the third home run, I was like, maybe it works.
Yeah.
And then you had a fourth home run. I'm like, kick him in the nuts.
Yeah.
Hey.
Sure. And just talking about the excitement, like my youngest has never particularly been a sports fan.
Yeah.
And he was texting me last night from the upper deck. He's at the game having a great time. Yeah. In the middle of that inning, around home run number 4, he's texting me, this is insane.
Yeah, I mean, and to think about it, like it's a long way away. I mean, it's 4 wins away from hosting having a part of a World Series here. Yeah. Then think about just the Valley, the state in general. In February, you hosted a Super Bowl. We're on the cusp of hosting a World Series.
Yeah.
And next spring, early summer, we're expected to host a possible NBA championship again.
Final Four.
That's just crazy. I mean, you think about it, it's like 3 of these teams are just doing absolutely amazing right now. The opposite of that is Michael Bidwell with the Cardinals.
Yeah. For those who've missed it in the as we tape this on Thursday, The Athletic has just dropped a story on what it's like working in the Cardinals office.
Spoiler alert, not good.
Not good.
Apparently, according to The Athletic, many of the employees on the non-football operation side, I think it was, complain. I think it was complain under their breath, don't really say anything, and then just go out to their cars at lunch and cry.
Yeah. One new employee was told on her first day that you're not really officially a Cardinals employee until Michael Bidwell yells at you. And she said that took 20 minutes when he yelled at her for not walking fast enough in the hallway.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Yeah. And it legitimately gets darker from there.
I know. It's like, but it seems like this is kind of interesting because I always think, particularly with sports media, like, things get out because people want them out.
Yeah.
And you got to kind of wonder if, like, there's maybe somebody who are really hoping or trying to force Bidwell to sell the team, to get out of the club.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know.
And I think the Bidwells are fairly rare at this point in being an owner where that's the business.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Hunt family, maybe. I don't know much about the Hunt family.
Yeah, but increasingly, sports team ownership is
these are vanity projects.
Yeah, it's a vanity project for billionaires.
Yeah,
and that's not the case for the Bidwells. This is the family business.
Yeah, wow.
And the ownership does not come out well in this article.
No, I mean, ownership has not been coming out well for a while.
Yeah,
I mean, last year they had the survey. The facilities, the players. It turns out that the Bidwell was charging players for lunch.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, my heart doesn't bleed for, some of the salaries those athletes are paid. Like, they could afford lunch, but it's the message.
Yes. And if you can be treated decently at any number of NFL teams, and there's one where you feel that you will not be treated decently.
Yeah.
That word gets out fast.
Yeah. And it just makes you look petty and cheap.
Yes.
And
look petty and cheap, and good luck signing your next free agent.
Yeah. And, it just seems like we went through a similar thing a few years ago with Sarver. Stories started leaking out about him.
Yeah.
I am not suggesting in any way that some of the allegations in the Athletic are anywhere near as severe as what we're alleged. It's a different case.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that, you see these negative stories come out. Like, gee, how did they get out? How did an NFL survey that was supposed to be anonymous or whatever? I think it was supposed to, how did that get out with all those details?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember if it was supposed to be anonymous or not. It might have been.
I know, that's why I got to bring. That's why I got to bring McClune back in when we start talking sports. Can we go kidnap him one more time?
Just ambush him as he's trying to leave after the extra point. Yeah, and the tricky thing with the NFL is we've seen how hard it is to get rid of someone because they really wanted Daniel Snyder out of there for a long time. And it took years. And the allegations against Snyder
were awful.
Yeah. Not to downplay the what they're saying about the Cardinals in this, but they're not in the same realm as Daniel Snyder.
No.
And that took years of intense pressure for him to finally.
But I mean, it's clear that somebody's trying to make them get this information out for a reason. And constantly too. I mean, it has an effect, I think, on the team when this negative information keeps coming out on you.
Yeah.
It's no surprise that players don't. Hell, man, you got the top draft prospect in the country next year has already signaled through his father that.
Yeah, as soon as when it looked like the Cardinals were likely to have a number 1 pick, Caleb Williams comes out and says, "Don't assume I'm coming out." and everyone, I mean, whoever has the number 1 pick typically isn't very good because that's how you get the number 1 pick. Yeah. But everyone took that as a shot across the Cardinals' bow.
It is a weird thing, and I'm not the first one to bring it up, but like that whole idea with the NFL and any other career, if you make it to the best college and then you're the best student at that college and blah, 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 you get your pick of where you want to go, and you go to the top firm, top business, best run, or whatever you want to do. But in the NFL, the price you win for being the best is to go to the worst.
I think there's a really, really great argument to be made to eliminate the draft in all sports.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's just inherently unfair to dictate where someone has to go, and I don't think eliminating it would be the disaster people immediately think it would be.
But anytime there's change, Colin, it's like, we don't like change.
I know. People go nuts.
I know.
People go nuts.
I know. All right, I'll end it on that.
Sounds good.
I think we should end it on that controversial statement. Colin thinks we should eliminate the draft in all sports.
Yes. And go Diamondbacks.
Go Diamondbacks, buddy.
Kick them in the nuts.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.